Hello and welcome to the third and the Dawn Football Show. I'm Joe. With me is Cecil, as always, here to recap the divisional round of the NFL playoffs and preview the conference championships, as well as get to some other NFL news that's going on right now. Cecil, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. A lot of better games this last weekend, so that's always great. A lot of those results didn't turn out the way we necessarily wanted, but that's okay. That's football. I'm excited. It's championship week.
Absolutely. And with that comes some news. We'll start with the news. The biggest news being Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan to take the Chargers job. It seems like the Chargers really wanted him. They actually borderline kidnapped him and just made him stay for a second interview, brought his wife in, and they hired him away from Michigan. At Michigan, obviously won the national championship. And now his job is kind of complete there, at least in his mind. He's wanted that NFL challenge ever since the 49ers let him go all those years ago. So, Cease, what do you think about the Chargers hiring Jim Harbaugh?
I like it a lot. I think it's good for Jim Harbaugh. I think there's a lot of weird things happening in the college landscape between NIL money and transfer portal, so it makes sense for him to leave. For the Chargers, I think it's a great, hiring as well. I think he's a really good coach. I think he kind of got jettisoned in San Francisco for really no reason other than Trent Baalke and all the other idiots that were running the team before John Lynch got there. Basically, just didn't agree with what Jim Harbaugh was doing, even though he got them to a Super Bowl with, Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. So you got to think about that in real time, how much he did without a quarterback, which is, kind of seems the 49er way at this point under Kyle Shanahan as well. But Jim Harbaugh is a really good football coach. He's a great football coach.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's interesting. I'm excited to kind of see what he does with the Chargers. I'm really hoping that Jim Harbaugh is able to overcome the Chargers chargering. That's always been kind of the big problem with the organization as a whole. No matter what seems the people try to do, they always seem to fumble the bag at the last possible second. But Justin Herbert's a great young quarterback. They have some weapons. Rashawn Slater is a good. They've got some good offensive line pieces. They got some people on defense as well. It's just a question of are they going to put it all together? How quick are we talking? Because the biggest thing with this Chargers team, when you look at it, is there are a lot of aging vets on this team as well, which has been a huge thing. So I think it can be a good hire. I think he can do very well, but I'll be interested to see how this team gets constructed, and how quickly are they going to compete? Because obviously the expectation is they're coming for the Chiefs in the West, but the reality is a lot of guys on that roster are getting paid a lot of money, and they're getting a little older. And really, Justin Herbert's kind of the young core, so to speak, and everyone else is kind of a lot older.
Yeah, with you on that. I'd give this grade an A for him. I would give it an A plus. But I just I don't know how the players will respond to. He's more of a disciplinarian coach. That usually works. But that's the only thing to say. I would say I think he ran out of favor at the end of his time with the 49ers. Probably shouldn't have been fired, mind you, but just that type of coach. He definitely took this job partially because of his want to be in the NFL again, partially because the NCAA was going to come down and put some sanctions on Michigan. So get out of Dodge while you can. I will say, though, too, Michigan isn't this program that recruits at the level of Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson over the last several years. He, for the first 7 years of his time at Michigan, he did his job. He won the games he should have won. He did what he should have done. These last 2 years, he's taken it above and beyond. He's outkicked his coverage in terms of what talent he's had on the roster, and I don't really care that they were sneaking and cheating on the sidelines or whatever. It's kind of a funny story, but at the end of the day, I don't think it mattered that much. He did a fantastic job with that Michigan team, and honestly, I'm excited to see not just how they do in that AFC West East, but we got the NFL draft coming up. I think he might be taking a lot of his players from Michigan in this NFL draft throughout the draft. So that'll be interesting to see how many he gets of those. The other coaching news we had, I mean, we had Gerard Mayo a couple weeks ago. That was natural progression, but we also had Antonio Pierce being the interim coach for the Raiders, getting elevated to full-time head coach. Cease, we talked about this kind of during the season while it happened, and we kind of said, like, hey, the players want this. The last time an interim coach came in, did a very good job. They let him walk. Probably the right call for the Raiders.
Oh, absolutely. There were reports of Max Crosby basically saying, if you don't give Antonio Pierce the head coaching job, I'm going to demand a trade. That's a pretty big vote of confidence. That shows you a lot. That when the one that's pretty much one of your only stars on the team really at this point, especially on defense, just goes, I want this guy here, and I'm willing to put my name to it as well. So I mean the turnaround is unprecedented. Really, I mean he really got them playing like a completely different team down the stretch. Um, there's talks about Marvin Lewis is going to be part of that staff as well. I don't think that's horrible. Obviously, with all head coaches, it's about what is the staff they're going to build around him. It'll be interesting to see. But there's one thing we know about him is that he is a motivator. He's not some guy who's going to you know you know basically be like it's my way, it's over the highway. This is my system. That's what we're running. He's not a system guy. He's a motivator. He's a guy that's about executing and being aggressive, which makes sense since he's a guy from the defensive side of the ball. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good hire for them. I don't think they should have passed up on anything else. I don't think putting Jim Harbaugh there it would have been a good idea. I think build on the culture and the momentum you had at the end of last season and see if you could make this real. And we'll see what the coaching staff he builds brings with him as well, because that's just as important, especially for a first time head coach.
Yeah, the important thing is he has the locker room, as you said. Max Crosby wants him there. All the players seemingly want him there, and now they can build this team. Whether that's drafting a quarterback, trading for a quarterback, getting this team to a level where they can compete in the AFC West, and it makes the AFC West a lot more fun. So we got Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, Antonio Pierce. Now it'll be a fun division. Heading on to the future. The last bit of coaching news we'll get to: the Tennessee Titans hire Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan to be their head coach. A lot of this stems from what he did with Joe Burrow over the last several years, and what he did. I think this year is kind of the bigger thing. What he did with Jake Browning really put him as one of the top offensive coordinators on the market for a head coaching job, because Jake Browning went from a guy who no one wanted and a guy that undrafted to a guy who could be getting a backup job or fighting for a starting job if given the opportunity, if the contract situation with the Bengals doesn't work out. So he gets that job from Tennessee, and I think his task now is working with Will Levis. So I like that hire as well. I think they're 3 for 3 on hires this year, or 4 for 4.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as high on it as like Harbaugh or the Antonio Pierce. I'm going to give it a solid B plus range. Um, Here's the big thing. It's kind of weird because we're getting to this weird part of the league now where a lot of the head coaches are also the play callers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of weird sometimes to separate who's doing what, whose genius is it for this or that. Obviously, in the history of the NFL, it's a coaching staff, right? There's an entire room of guys that are putting this game plan together at all times. Brian Callahan was a big part of that week in and week out. Big part of install, a big part of plays they're going to run, passing game, all that stuff. I mean, he did a lot for the offense, and it showed. But the reality is he's never called plays, so that's kind of a question for me at times. Um, and two, I think some of these coordinators, I think he did a really good job with Jake Browning towards the end of the season. What I do like about him as well is that he'll use the talent around him to maximize kind of what you're going to get on the field. Like he's not just going to go, we're doing it this way because that's the system I like running. You can see he's open with Joe Burrow. He likes running out empty. They're going to throw more of those concepts in there. When Jake Browning was in there to help his young quarterback, he went more with a heavy run scheme, a lot of screens. So he's an adaptable guy, which I think is helpful as well. It could be very helpful for the Titans as they progress because this isn't going to be a 1 year rebuild. My only really concerns are, it's a little different when you're the one having to make all the decisions. You're the one playing, going to be probably calling the plays. You're also the head coach. And again, at Cincinnati, there's one thing we know. There's already a lot of criticism about the head coach also trying to call the plays. So we'll see how that plays out. And it's not going to be a short rebuild. This is something that hopefully Titans ownership is committed to. And is it really that much better than Mike Vrabel? I don't really know.
Yeah, I think the bad part of this is getting rid of Mike Vrabel. The good, I think, for Brian Callahan is just that he had that success with the Bengals. I would say that I think it's a good idea that the Bengals upgraded or promoted Dan Pitcher from quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator. That will keep some continuity for Joe Burrow heading into next season. But for the Titans, yeah, I think it's going to be muchly graded on the future in terms of can he do better than Vrabel, and Vrabel was not given a great roster, so we'll see what he does in the future here. Those are the coaching changes right now. We still got some openings, Seahawks, the Commanders, a couple other ones out there. But let's move on, Stace, to our recap of the divisional round because we had some, as you said, good games. First off, was probably the worst of them. We have the Texans at the Ravens. Ravens defend their home turf, 34-10, get this big win. Lamar Jackson does it with his legs and his arm, over 100 yards rushing and passing, 2 rushing touchdowns in this one. For me, Cease, this is one where the wheels just fell off for the Texans. They already outkicked their coverage all year long, performing above expectations. And this is one they should not be upset about. It's just a nice building block for this young team, and you could be seeing the Texans in the playoffs a lot over the next several years.
Right. I mean, I feel bad because no one, especially when your team wants to go, oh yeah, you had a really good season. Look about how bad you were supposed to be. Like it's glass half full. Being optimistic. But the reality here is the Texans did do a really good job considering everything we thought about them, and it's a good thing to build up for next year. CJ Stroud is the real deal. Will Anderson's the real deal. They got a lot of young guys who stepped up and started contributing early. So this team is probably, is used in baseball a lot of times, but they showed up a year or two earlier than the rebuild than expected. So that's gonna be dividends for them. And right now, I mean, if I'm looking at the AFC South, it's gonna be a much more competitive division than it's been. But right now, I'd pick the Texans to be winners of the AFC South right now before this offseason starts because I have the most confident CJ Stroud of any of the other quarterbacks. So, you can talk about maybe that's a little bit of a knock on how Trevor Lawrence played down the stretch, but the reality is they played really well. They're a force to be reckoned with. They're a team that should be considered to be, a potential playoff team next year as well. But I mean, the Ravens, Lamar just kind of went off in the second half. That's kind of what happened. He just really poured it on for the last 2 quarters. Rushing, those touchdown. He wanted it. It showed. Maybe they showed up a little bit slow at the first half, but by the end, he dominated.
Absolutely, and a lot of advanced stats will tell you this Ravens team is playing about as good as anyone can, and now they are favored to win the Super Bowl by a lot of advanced metrics. And it all shows up here too. I think it's Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. You're able to use your legs, but he's also using his arm when he needs to. He didn't have the most passing yards in this game by any stretch, but when he had to make throws, he did make throws. Good signs heading into this week for Baltimore as they're going to be hosting that AFC Championship game. The other game on Saturday, Stage, we had the Packers and 49ers. The Packers get off to a nice start in the rain. Aaron Jones is doing really good for them. At the end of the game, Jordan Love makes some mistakes that lets the 49ers creep back in. Brock Purdy, who started off the game really poorly, ends up making some key throws. There was, I think, a really key throw. I think it was a third down that he threw to Juwan Jennings that just layered over a defender's hand to help pick up for first down. And the 49ers score 10 fourth quarter points to come back and win this one. This was, Debo Samuel got hurt early in this game and did not return. He's questionable for the NFC Championship this Sunday, which I think really threw a wrench into this 49ers offense. I think, when he's been down, they've struggled in the past as well. So they get the win. It's not something they're probably too thrilled about, but given the weather, given the Debo injury, you're just happy to be playing an NFC Championship game.
No, absolutely. Again, I mean, the Packers played really well and, I mean, surprised a lot of people in these 2 games. They demolished the Cowboys, and then, I mean, they went toe-to-toe with the 49ers for most of that game. Jordan Love made a final mistake, which, again, I mean, he's a young quarterback, and, again, a lot of pressure was put on him to, play well in this game, and, it's a hell of a team to go against the 49ers. Really good defense, playmakers all over the place. The pressure to, at the beginning of the game, all the pressure was on the 49ers. But by the second half, all the pressure was on the Green Bay Packers to pull it home because everybody in the stadium was just sitting there waiting for the 49ers to wake up. And they finally did. Jordan Love makes the key mistake. They capitalize. But other than that, I mean, nobody on the 49ers offense really had that great of a day. Christian McCaffrey ends up with 2 touchdowns, but it really just came together in those key moments down the stretch, and that was what was huge and the difference maker for them. Brock Purdy really did not look comfortable with the rain. He just, he didn't know what to do. Defensive players didn't know what to do. It was weird that the 49ers team looks so unprepared at their own home stadium,
Mhm.
considering they, if of anyone, should kind of be able to test or know the conditions. But I guess there haven't been that many rainy games in San Francisco either this year. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of new to them as well. But yeah, Brock Purdy struggled at times, but the idea that he came up with a key game-winning drive is huge. And I think that plays a lot to Brock Purdy is maybe more than just a game manager. I'm never going to be like, oh, Brock Purdy is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he has flashes, and he can, it's just a testament to what he can do, and that you can't just discredit this kid or go, the 49ers are down, because that has been the trend. If the 49ers are down by, I think, what, 5 points or something to start the fourth quarter. Shanahan had not like won a game basically.
Mhm.
So I mean, they broke that trend here. I mean, obviously they scored a field goal like in the first 2 seconds of the fourth quarter. So that's kind of a I don't know if you really count as the end of the stat, because reality is like that could have just been the third quarter. But nonetheless, it shows that this team's different than some of the other 49ers teams. They do need to figure out some things on defense, especially when it comes to, perimeter receivers. They're having a lot of trouble with at times. And then, the run defense needs to show back up, because in this game, they kind of got mauled. And I think the 49ers faced a test that they're just not used to, because the Packers are, I wouldn't say they're great on offense. The thing is, with Aaron Jones, they're officially balanced enough that it's hard to really prepare. Most teams are going to, tip their hand one way or another. The Bengals with Joe Burrow are going to usually lean pass. I think what they struggle with, and you can see this in the Bengals 49ers game we both watched in detail, um, when the team was kind of running, like when the 49ers can't figure out what they're going to run a lot more, and this is true of any defense, it's hard to really prepare for both, right? You
Mhm.
can't try to rush the passer, and then next thing you know, it's a run play. The offensive linemen are going to have a huge advantage on you. Just like every defensive lineman loves the pass rush, because the reality is all the pressure and all the difficulty and technique is on the offensive lineman then. What's run blocking? It's the exact opposite. You just got a bunch of giant men running at you trying to push you over. That's all it is. And, it's not like, oh, they got to protect this guy. That other guy is also running right at you. So it's a different thing. Every offensive lineman in the world will say, I love run blocking, because I can go out there and actually hit someone versus just waiting for somebody like, a Nick Bosa to just come across the line and just beat the hell out of me. I can, you get a couple punches in yourself. So 49ers pull it out in this one.
Yeah, Packers have to be feeling really good with Jordan Love's play for the most part. And also, like you said, Aaron Jones just really helped this team down the stretch. Without him, they're a much different team. They also fired defensive coordinator Joe Barry. That has a lot of Packers fans rejoicing for some of his schematic choices, we'll say, because they do have talent on that defense. So they look good heading into the offseason. Not that you're ever happy to lose, but they look good. And the 49ers, Cece, you mentioned Brock Purdy, like, not necessarily being a game manager. Like, a lot of times, I think when you have a lot of talent around you, you're kind of thrust into that role, because I don't want Brock Purdy throwing the ball 50 yards downfield. I want him to get it into the playmaker's hands. I want the 49ers to run the ball, because they have the talent to do so with Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams. So that's, I mean, I think he's almost put in a box based on what you would do. Like if you're playing a video game and you're in a tight game, like all these NFL games are, you're not going to try to turn the ball over. You're not going to push it downfield to throw 50 yards in a 3-point game when there's 10 minutes left. So one of those things to kind of think about, if maybe it's not just like, he is a game manager because of what he is. I think it's just what he has to do in this system. And then I'll also say, yes, I'm still very concerned about 49ers and injuries. That's been my whole thing all year. Even when I picked the Seahawks preseason to win the NFC West, it's just one injury changes things. It looked like Debo got hurt in this one. The offense couldn't adjust. The weather made some changes. So we'll see if Debo can play in this NFC Championship game this weekend. Moving on to Sunday, we have the Lions beating the Buccaneers 31-23. And Cecil, we've lived very great lives. I'm not sure I ever expected the Detroit Lions to be in the NFC Championship game, but here they are after that 31-23 win. Jared Goff plays well. That offensive line's been protecting him. Jahmyr Gibbs, 9 carries, 74 yards and a touchdown. They've got that little smash and dash thing going on with Gibbs and Montgomery. At the end of the day, the Bucs were still dropping passes. Baker Mayfield had a couple too many turnovers. But again, I just, before I let you get into what you want to say, Cease, here, I just got to say Baker Mayfield. I would take that guy for $4 million on my NFL team any day of the week. That was a heck of an effort, and he's definitely going to be back for the Buccaneers next year.
Oh, absolutely. Baker Mayfield is honestly, you could argue that's one of the. I mean, probably the most. Besides Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy's the most valuable signing because he's the cheapest. The ratio here. It's like Paranormal Activity is the highest. Grossing. You know, movie per like budget to actual profitability. It's going to be the same thing with Brock Purdy, but Baker Mayfield's pretty damn close too. I mean, talk about a low budget and just maximum results. The Bucks, and I'll give their GM that. I'll give Brett Veach that. I mean, the reality is, he found a diamond in the rough. He decided I can't pay anybody anymore. I'm going to roll the dice on a guy who could get me to that level. It could crash and burn. We sat here at the beginning of the season and went, Baker Mayfield could be the Baker Mayfield we've seen thousands of times, where he forces the ball downfield. He throws the ball like 40 times, and you're just like, what is going on in this game? And we saw some of those games in the Bucks. It wasn't perfect, but the reality is, for $4 million, who cares, man? I mean, if you went to Walmart and bought a pair of blue jeans that lasted you for 3 years, that's a hell of a pair of blue jeans. And he's that blue collar kind of guy. So, hats off to Baker Mayfield. There's still a lot of questions with this Bucks team. One isn't going to be the quarterback next year. They need to fix some things on defense. But even they got better as the season went on. Some young pass rushers came in as well. But let's talk about the Lions here. We talked about the Lions all year, and we went. I mean, they could get lucky. They could be kind of a dark horse team. Things have to fall the right way for them, though. It's going to depend on the matchups, and it's going to be hard if they have to go on the road. They haven't had to do that, luckily. Honestly, the Rams game was a more difficult matchup than the Buccaneers game was, honestly. I think most people will think the same thing. I think the Rams were a much more dangerous team in this playoff than I think the Buccaneers or Eagles were ever going to be that they were going to face after winning that game. A lot of things changed. The Cowboys blew it, and here we go with the 49ers, with the ticket to the NFC Championship game. But this isn't going to be an easy game for them. We'll preview it here soon. But everything that could go and bounce Detroit's way so far this, postseason has. After everything with the debacle with the 2-point conversion against Dallas, it all worked out perfectly for them. They didn't have to play the Green Bay Packers either. And I think, honestly, they're really happy about that because they had gotten that 2-point conversion. They would have been in Dallas' spot, most likely, it looks like. And that's a Green Bay Packer in game one. And next thing you know, you're kind of pretty much where you are now. But I'd much rather play the two teams they played than Green Bay after what I saw the last 2 weeks. So hats off to Dan Campbell and that team. The run game hasn't been as strong because they've been playing much better defenses. Amon-Ra St. Brown, though, has come alive and has been really looks like a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL right now. Sam Laporta continues to make key catch after key catch. They got offensive weapons all over at all the key positions. They got a great offensive line. Jared Goff is keeping it together for the most part. There's some times where I swear to God, I don't know if he's actually part statue, but that man will not move. And I can't. And it's the biggest knock on Goff, and it's the number one reason why he'll never be a top 10 quarterback to me is just because I just cannot deal with the just panic in his eyes when a play is not going just the way he wanted it to. It's, maybe I'm spoiled by the modern NFL because there were a lot more guys like that 10 years ago where, they're pocket passers, and once things go wrong, that's it. So I can't knock him too much, but it's just, it comes up and bites him way too often. And this might be a game that this bites him in. But I mean, I'm hyped to hear the Detroit Lions are in an NFC Championship game. I don't know when the last time that happened was. Probably in the 50s when they won their last championship. So hats off to them. God bless. I hope they pull it off. But it's a hell of a story regardless of what happens the rest of the road.
Cease, one more point about this. For the Lions, awesome head coaching hire a couple years ago. A lot of people weren't happy with the Dan Campbell hire. We were hyped up about it from the start with like the biting the kneecaps thing and just like, man, that guy makes you want to run through a brick wall. And you had mentioned that like sometimes hiring guys who are just play callers isn't the best thing. That's because your job isn't to be a play caller. Dan Campbell's doing a fantastic job keeping his team motivated, making sure that they believe in themselves, making sure they know he believes in them, and making game time decisions. Sometimes maybe over aggressively, but making game time decisions, and that's your job. You're more of a manager. You're not supposed to be in the thick of every single play call, and he's doing a very good job. So while we see success when these guys are extraordinary, whether it's Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan or Mike McDaniel, that's not necessarily their job. That's not historically how it goes, and it's refreshing to see, the Lions get rewarded for not like going to hire the next big offensive coordinator or next best defensive coordinator, and just getting a guy who will manage the team, make sure everyone's on the same page, and have a united effort to go win this thing. Not saying they're going to win the whole thing, but even so, I think any Lions fan a couple of years ago would take the Dan Campbell era from where he started to where he is now. So really good story for them, and props to them for getting that coach that can get you to want to run through a brick wall. The AFC divisional round, last game of the weekend, we had the Chiefs and the Bills. Patrick Mahomes had to play a road playoff game. Now, since we had a little bit of a two-story thing going on here, we had what was happening in the stands, what was happening on the field. This was a great football game. On the field, we had the Chiefs winning 27-24, back and forth, back and forth. It comes down to fourth quarter. The Chiefs are able to score. The Bills set up for a field goal to tie it, and they do wide right, which has to be heartbreaking for Bills fans. In this game, Patrick Mahomes does okay, nothing extraordinary. Travis Kelce, 2 touchdowns in front of Taylor Swift and his brother Jason Kelce. Isaiah Pacheco ran the ball well. We mentioned that if the Chiefs commit to the run, they're a much harder team to defend this year, I should say, over past years. So they get the win. It's a very tough and emotional game, and tough for Bills fans. And then in the crowd, you have Jason Kelce, jumping into the stands from the box to go chug beers with fans, to go bring little girls to meet Taylor Swift. That's why everyone loves Jason Kelce, Hall of Famer for sure. The reports are that maybe he's not retiring now, so we'll see what happens with that. But the funny story behind it is his wife, who everyone's seen from the documentaries and everything, was telling him, "Hey, this is the first time we're meeting Taylor Swift. Can you try to keep it casual or whatever?" And he just goes, "Oh, I'm jumping out of this box and hanging out with fans." And he goes and chugs the beers with them. So awesome for Jason Kelce, awesome for content. I know people are like sick of seeing Taylor Swift on the sidelines or whatever. I like seeing all of them on the sidelines. It's something else besides just announcers filling the time with some BS. But when Jason Kelce gets on there, takes his shirt off and chugs some beers, that's how you should enjoy a football game in Buffalo.
Oh, 100%. It's just like Ryan Fitzpatrick 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting there partying with the fans, shirtless in the 10-degree weather. I think it's good. And again, this will kind of close the book on the Taylor Swift talk real quick, but I don't have a problem with him showing her. And I don't have a problem with it being more than once. I'd love to get as many Taylor Swift and Jason Kelce shirtless clips of the box as I can. I think it's a win-win for everybody. Everybody, it's like a fun family dynamic. I'd love to watch that sitcom they all sign up for. I think it'd be at appointment viewing. And I love Jason Kelce. It's weird because I kind of hate Travis Kelce so much. And this game kind of like renewed. So I kind of like this game because one, if you're a Bills fan, I feel really bad for you. I mean that's a heartbreaker. You just got your heart ripped out. Basically a third playoffs in a row. Mm-hmm. Your life is hard, and I'm a Bengals fan, and it's like I've never experienced anything quite like this. I mean, I've had a lot of playoff losses, but I've never had a team this complete. Just lose and lose, and just in the most painful ways possible over and over again. Pretty much to the same teams. The Chiefs, especially the Bengals too, twice in the last 2 years have been some rough games for them. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is if you're the Buffalo Bills. I mean, is Sean McDermott the answer? I don't know. I really don't at this point. I mean, it doesn't look like he's really getting them. They've regressed in pretty much every way. It wasn't a great overall year for the Bills. They struggled. They were up and down. I know Josh Allen was hurt at times. They had some injuries all over the field. But the product was not great. And that kind of goes with him. He was kind of calling the plays by the end of the year. Leslie Frazier isn't there anymore. And they're kind of at a weird crossroads as a team. Because Josh Allen is amazing, top three quarterback in the NFL. He can do everything, but at the same time, he is probably the one person on earth that can take over a game and also just infinitely lose a game. And it popped up in the most subtle way in this game possible, right? Maybe not some giant interceptions here or there. Maybe not some, the turnover games, multiple turnovers in one game we see throughout the season. But that one play late in the fourth quarter, where Stephon Diggs is just running right across the field. And, Josh Allen sees him, ignores him because he wants to go for the kill shot touchdown. That's kind of further in the end zone. And that guy is kind of more wide, is kind of open, but not as open as Stephon Diggs. And, people are crashing in on him fast. Instead of taking the easy, 10 yards, complete the ball, he tries to go for it all, and it doesn't work. And that's kind of that's the Josh Allen problem. Is he wants, sometimes he wants to put on the cape, as Tony Romo loves to say, but you don't need to do that every time. Just because you can throw the ball 60 yards and you want to be the hero and you want to put this awesome 30-yard bomb touchdown on the board, that's not what makes you a Hall of Fame quarterback. So the reality is sometimes you take that. Tom Brady is the king of checkdowns, man. Like he throws the ball 10 yards, he throws it to the open receiver over and over and over. He made Wes Welker, Julian Edelman into, household names by literally doing the same thing over and over for years. And if you do that, you will have success because give what the defense gives you. Take the situation to advance. I know you want the touchdown. I know you want to take the lead. You want to put the, demon of the Kansas City Chiefs behind you. But get closer to field range, give you another set of downs, and make it happen. Don't put yourself in third and long. And then, leaving it up to everything else. So obviously, coulda, shoulda, woulda, everything coming back into perspective. He obviously would want that pass back, but you just got to know that in the moment too, because in the moment is where those things are made, and in the moment is where Josh Allen continues to hurt himself and hurt his legacy. Because when will they get to a Super Bowl? It's really a question. It's a real question. It's a sad one because I don't really know where you fix this team besides trying again with another coach. And the reality is that really going to make it different? They have Stephon Diggs has like disappeared from the team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure they created, James Cook has been great for him. That running game has been a huge success, but at the cost of basically the things that made their offense really good in the past. I know Gabe Davis was hurt in this game, but Gabe Davis isn't a great number two receiver. You get Dalton Kincaid, that's great, but it just seems like some of the stuff that's made this Bills team really good over the last couple of years faded down the stretch of this season. Josh Allen's amazing, but the reality is they're not having him get the ball to other people. They're not having other playmakers. It's just him out there sometimes, it feels like. Josh Allen's punching the ball in the end zone and the Chiefs can't do anything about it. That's great. I'm glad that you have Josh Allen there. The reality is, why is Josh Allen your quarterback who could literally get hit and get hurt at any moment by one of the gigantic Chiefs defenders out there, the one always punching the ball into the end zone? Why is there no other game plan? Why? I mean, at some point, man, like it's just got to be Josh Allen doesn't have to do everything because it's definitely that's part of the reason these things keep happening to Josh Allen is because he has to feel like I'm the one who has to make the big play. If I don't make a big play, we're not going to get there. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like a Greek tragedy in Buffalo every year. And I hope it changes, but I don't really have a roadmap to what can be more successful because it's the sad thing is some teams get so close to getting over the hump and sometimes you don't have it. You think you want it, you think everything makes sense on paper, but you can't get there. And at what point do you keep just going and doing the same thing over and over and hoping it's a different result?
With you on that, Cease. I also say I'm kind of with you on the part where you said I don't know when the Buffalo Bills will get to the Super Bowl. It's not just like, hey, Joe Burrow comes back next year, but you have the Texans up and coming. The Jaguars could rebound. Jim Harbaugh's in LA now, but also with your own team, like Matt Milano got hurt this year. Trey White got hurt. That defense, you know, had some injuries. They're aging. Von Miller's aging. Didn't have a great year at all this year. Like, what's the next step? Is it bringing in a new coach going to get more out of this roster? Joe Brady did a good job as offensive coordinator, but still has to kind of get some tendencies out of Josh Allen to take what the defense is giving them. And also he has to evolve as a play caller as well. So it's a situation they got to figure out here soon. And I think that's something they could focus on for the Chiefs, though. I mean, it's Patrick Mahomes and everyone else. I mean, I Bengals fans here don't like Patrick Mahomes personally, but man, that guy, what a start to a career, stats wise, wins wise. Getting to Super Bowls, getting to AFC championships. This is not by accident by any means, and it's one of those things where we're gonna look back in 10 years and be like, kind of trying to remember these performances. This one not maybe as much because it was only 215 yards and 2 touchdowns, but just hard to knock off a dynasty. It's hard to knock off quarterbacks like this. It was the same way with Tom Brady all those years. If you knocked him out of the playoffs, you better have some pride when you did it, and hopefully we get some teams to challenge him down the road, like the Bengals. Maybe they can do it again, but as currently constructed, the Bills just cannot beat the Chiefs no matter what they try. All right, so let's get to our picks for the conference championship games, Cecil. These are both on Sunday, 3 and 6:30. Starting us off at 3 is the Chiefs and Ravens AFC Championship game. Baltimore is hosting this one. They are favored by 3.5. That has moved from 3 earlier in the week. Not supposed to be any bad weather, 49 degrees and pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm going to go Ravens to win and cover here. I think they are the more complete roster. I think they have a full offense, full of weapons. Mark Andrews is probably going to be back in this game too, which is going to be a huge uplift, I think, for that passing attack. That has already honestly gotten better and better since the time he got hurt. So, I mean, there's a lot of key things there. The defense is one of the best in the NFL. And I think, Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs offense has been playing a lot better. They turned it on in the playoffs. I'll give them that. But it's still not great. Like you said, 215 yards. I think Pacheco is the key to this game for the Chiefs. If they want to have a chance, Pacheco's got to get going, and they got to be committed to that. Because if they're just trying to throw Pat Mahomes back there vintage style and hope he can score, 30 points, it's not going to happen. Because those receivers were a little more reliable last week, but it's not going to continue. And the Ravens are not going to give Pat Mahomes the time to do what he needs to do in the pocket. So it's Pat Mahomes. Maybe he turns it on. It's a possibility. It's the playoffs, right? So anything can really happen. All these teams are good, and playoff legends are made in these kind of environments where some guy just plays out of his mind. Pat Mahomes has the ability to do that. But from what I'm looking at, and what I'm looking at as a complete team here, Lamar can do as well as Pat Mahomes can in this game, considering the weapons and the team around him. And I just think the Ravens can win this game by a touchdown.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I picked the Ravens to win and cover on thegamehouse.com when it was at 3, but I think even 3.5, I'm taking that, the same thing basically. But I think the defense is the difference here, kind of like you said. They've got playmakers on all 3 levels. I'm not sure who their best player on defense is. They got good linebackers, Kyle Hamilton. Their offense has maybe not as many stars as you would think, but they have Lamar, and that's the only star you need if that's what you're going to do. So I think his development's been great. I'm a big fan of Todd Monken and his offense that stemmed from Georgia. He leaves Georgia. They don't win the national championship. Not saying that's the only reason, but then he goes to the Baltimore, and the offense looks rejuvenated. And I'm just going to say, for a team that is a division rival, Cease, I have loved the Ravens drafts the last couple of years. I just keep on looking up and down this roster of how many guys that I just loved and I believed in, so I'm going to keep that belief in them. Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum, Justin Matabuke. We have who I think of Zay Flowers last year. Guys that I was higher than consensus on, and they've proven to be good. I don't think they're going to let me down now. So because this is maybe self-fulfilling or self-loving on my part, that I'm going to take the Ravens because I like these guys. But I'll take them. Ravens win and cover. Chiefs, as you said, have not played up to their standard all year long. Can Patrick Mahomes flip the switch? Absolutely. But I think the key is, like you said, Pacheco getting the running game going. Don't think it's going to be as easy to do against the Ravens. So let's go to the NFC Championship game, Sees. We have the Detroit Lions at the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are favored by 7, and it is going to be 69 degrees and no rain for this NFC Championship game. Must be nice.
Sounds beautiful. I'm going to pick the 49ers to win, but at 7, I'm going to take the Lions to cover right now. If you're betting it, 7.5. Come on, let's be smart, people. But here's why. I don't know what Debo Samuel's health is like. That worries me. This is a team that is built on running the ball in the 49ers. I mean, so are the Lions, but the 49ers are predicated on getting that ground game going. And there's one thing the Lions have proven is that they're very good against the run. Now, obviously, it's a different animal with Trent Williams and Chris McCaffrey in the backfield there. Um, it's going to be a physical game. One of the most physical football games you'll see in a while, and I love it. You're going to talk about the ultimate kind of, if you want to pick a storyline here, we're talking about a guy who's all about just grit and just, motivating and just running through walls. And you got a guy who's wants to be physical and believes in his scheme and believes in, his process basically. So we got the perfect, mind versus heart kind of game here. Guru versus ultimate motivator. So I'm hyped to see how it happens. The 49ers are a more talented team overall. I think there could be times where, the Lions secondary is very vulnerable. And Brock Purdy could have a decent game. And again, Debo Samuels is going to be a big, component of this. If he's not there, I definitely think the Lions can cover. If he's there, it's going to be a different ball game, and it's going to be, a touchdown probably. So if you're going to give me a touchdown for the Lions, I think they've, silenced a lot of doubters. I think they've done a good job all postseason of, establishing how they want to play and making it their game. They're not going to get as much of a chance in this one, so I don't see a road to victory as much. But again, it's a championship game. A lot of things can happen. That's what makes football exciting. These guys are going to be amped up. And honestly, everybody in that locker room, if you're the Detroit Lions, is going to go, we've been putting doubters, to bed all year long. People never believed in us. People haven't believed in this organization ever. And we're one game away from the Super Bowl. We don't have to worry about anything else. We're just all we got to do is execute for 60 minutes, and we're in a Super Bowl. That's all they need to think about. The 49ers are sitting there going, all the pressure in the world is on us. We haven't been playing as well as we thought we were supposed to. There's a lot of question marks about us. All the pressure's on the San Francisco 49ers. They're a team that's blown it and not made the Super Bowl a couple times. They've been so close so many times at this point. They haven't made a back return since the time they played the Chiefs. So, yeah, I think 49ers pull it out, but ultimately I think it's going to be a closer game than some of the pundits are putting it out to be. And I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a good game, but the 49ers will emerge victorious.
Same pick for a lot of the same reasons. So 49ers to win, but the Lions with the points. That Debo injury affects that offense a lot, and that's why I'm taking the Lions with the points there. I do think that this is a game of kind of like you said, different coaches, but they want to do the same thing. They both want to run the ball. And what's interesting is both secondaries have struggled, so it might make more sense to kind of unleash and throw the ball if teams are going to try to stack the box. That's going to be key here. I do think the end of my spiel here is that I think the San Francisco 49ers, like you said, have more talent, and I think they get the win because I like the Lions' offensive line to protect Jared Goff, but I think one or two key plays when you have Nick Bosa and now Chase Young coming after him, where Chase Young hasn't been maybe the best after being a second round or second overall pick, but I think having those two guys, that defense, that those linebackers, it's just more talent there. And can maybe throw Jared Goff off his game a little bit. So 49ers to win, Lions with the points for me. Cease, any final thoughts for the week?
Now I'm excited. We'll see what comes on here. It's very rare. I'm going to say it's very rare for 2-1 seeds to make the Super Bowl. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen very often. It's just like the Final Fours. It doesn't happen. So who's going to be the one that cracks and the pressure's all on them? I'm just looking forward to an exciting weekend.
I mean, we got the logo conspiracy theory here. The color of the logo always has the teams in it the last 3 years, so see if that holds up. I'll remind everyone, we'll be back next week. We're going to do the show next week to recap the conference championships and then preview the Super Bowl. Then we'll take a week off before the Super Bowl, and then we'll come back afterwards to recap the Super Bowl and everything else and wrap up the season. For now, thanks for listening. We'll see everyone next time.
See you guys.